Help me. Somebody help me. That's what my community board chair, Monica Harlow, was screaming at 7 in the morning as she tore down Birchfield Lane in a pink silk robe and designer heels. A cloud of furious hornets chasing her like living missiles, neighbors stumbling out with coffee mugs half raised and bathrobes half tied, staring in disbelief while I stood on my porch with my heart steady and my hands calm, watching 3 months of planning finally unfold exactly the way I designed it. Every sting landing on the woman who had treated our entire neighborhood like her personal shopping mall and private kingdom. 6 months earlier, none of this was even on my radar. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm an aerospace guidance engineer, the kind of guy who spends his life making sure things hit exactly where they're supposed to hit. And when my 20-year marriage imploded, I bought a small desert house in Cedar Ridge Estates on the edge of Mesa Heights, thinking I was buying silence, stability, and maybe the kind of life where my biggest worry would be whether I'd remembered to water the cactus in my gravel front yard, the air smelling of chlorine from the community pool, and hot dust from the Arizona sun. Everything clean and quiet and controllable, or so I thought. 3 days after I moved in, I heard the sharp, rapid click of heels on my front path. Like a metronome set to trouble, I opened the door with a box still in my hands, and there she was, Monica Harlow, mid-50s, desert tan like it cost money, hair sprayed into a blonde helmet that looked wind-proof, clipboard hugged to her chest like a badge of office, smile stretched tight as she said, "Welcome to Cedar Ridge, Mr. Cole. I'm Monica, chair of the Cedar Ridge Property Council." But while her mouth said welcome, her eyes were scanning my drought-tolerant yard like a code inspector hunting violations, and when she called my landscaping bold, I heard exactly what she meant. In HOA language, which is I hate this, but I haven't found the clause to fine you yet. That night, instead of unpacking or watching a movie like a emotionally exhausted divorcee, I made a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint and read every line of the covenants and restrictions, 60-plus pages of tiny print and legalese, and I realized the previous owner's xeriscaping was perfectly compliant. In fact, the Architectural Review Committee had approved the same design for multiple houses, so when my first package went missing a week later, a small part for my 3D printer, I blamed random porch pirates. When a set of precision tools vanished, I shrugged it off, but when a box of high-value circuit boards disappeared, I installed a basic doorbell camera, nothing fancy, just enough to see who was wandering up to my porch. The pattern that appeared made my engineer brain hum. The thefts only happened weekday mornings, same time window, always when Monica's gleaming white SUV sat in her driveway, and her husband Rick was out of town for his pharmaceutical sales job, and the footage didn't show some desperate kid running up and bolting. It showed Monica herself, walking to my porch like she owned the place, reading shipping labels, weighing the boxes in her hands like produce, deciding which ones were worth stealing and which she'd leave as if she'd developed a shopping routine that just happened to take place on my property. The day I confronted her was the day everything shifted. I saw her on the live feed step out of her SUV, pick up a box with several $100s worth of microchips for a defense subcontract, and turn toward her car. I yanked open my front door and said, "Hey, Monica, that's my package." She froze just long enough for me to see shock flicker across her face. Then that polished HOA smile slid back into place, and she said she was just checking it for me. That as CRPC chair she liked to ensure everyone got their items, which might have sounded noble if she hadn't been standing next to my clearly marked house numbers holding a box with my full name and address on it. I held out my hand and told her I was home. I'd take it, and as she surrendered the box I watched her eyes harden, like she'd just decided I had become a problem to be solved. 2 days later, the violation notice landed in my mailbox. Non-conforming xeriscaping, $50 a day until corrected, and that was the moment I understood this wasn't about plants or aesthetics. It was about control and retaliation, so I did the thing she never imagined I'd do. I treated her like a system to be reverse-engineered. I printed photos of every similar yard, pulled records showing prior approvals, dug into state law about selective enforcement, requested a formal hearing, and walked into the Architectural Committee meeting with a stack of documentation thick enough to use as a doorstop. The chair, Tom Walker, flipped through my evidence for maybe 30 seconds before admitting there had been inconsistency and withdrawing the violation, and I watched Monica's face cycle through an entire color chart, red to white to something tight and furious, while she sat there unable to override her own rules. I thought I'd won, but what I'd really done was step on the tail of a snake. First came a new violation about my perfectly standard white blinds, then rude comments at meetings about hostile surveillance equipment when I mentioned my camera, then an obvious push to paint me as unstable, while at the same time more neighbors started quietly telling me about missing packages, about fines they got that others didn't, about small, unexplained HOA expenses they'd never questioned. And when I brought theft up at a CRPC meeting, Monica shut it down with a tight smile and a comment about delivery companies, not board business. That's when I filed a formal police report with the clearest footage I had and met Detective Carla Ruiz, who watched my video twice, sighed like she'd seen this movie before, and started digging. Turning up an online account called Moni's Deals, selling brand new electronics that just happened to match stolen items from our area. But while the evidence stacked up, the district attorney treated it like a small, tidy case, offering Monica a deal, pay restitution, promise to stop, move on, and she turned it down, claimed the footage was doctored, hired a lawyer who sent me a cease and desist, which is when I realized she wasn't just arrogant, she was convinced she was untouchable. Her next moves proved how far she'd go. Bogus complaints to the Business Bureau claiming I was running an illegal operation, anonymous tips to the tax office about unreported income, calls to safety agencies describing me as some kind of explosive, hoarding maniac, and then a restraining order petition full of melodramatic language about feeling terrorized by my cameras and military-grade surveillance. So I hired Allison Price, a lawyer who specializes in HOA nightmares. And she explained that what we were dealing with was essentially a slap attack, a strategic attempt to bury me in legal stress until I gave up, and that our state's anti-slap laws could actually turn that strategy back on Monica if we documented everything. Meanwhile, my quiet neighbor 3 doors down, Greg Patel, who used to be an accountant, had been reviewing our HOA financial reports on his own, and one night he spread printouts across my kitchen table and showed me a pattern even uglier than the thefts, tens of thousands of dollars over a few years paid to fake-looking companies, with names like DGL Community Consulting and Harlow Solutions Group, all supposedly providing security assessments and landscape optimization, none of them existing as real businesses. The money ultimately landing in accounts tied to Monica and her husband, a slow, systematic siphon of roughly $67,000 from 127 homeowners, buried in bland line items that most people never read. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. The package thefts suddenly looked like just one branch on a much larger rotten tree, and Monica knew, on some level, that we were getting close. You could feel the tension every time she drove past, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her beloved, blessed plate frame quietly disappeared from her SUV, and then she tried to fix it. The only way someone like her knows how, she approached Greg in the grocery store, smiling over a cart of organic produce, and gently suggested maybe his math was off, maybe there was a way to correct the misunderstanding, offering cash if he would revise his conclusions, not realizing he had his phone recording in his pocket the entire time, catching every word of her attempted bribe, handing Detective Ruiz one more charge to tack onto the growing list. While she flailed, I got methodical. I designed a trap disguised as an ordinary high-value delivery, a package that looked and felt real but contained cameras, a GPS trigger, secure cloud backups, and courtesy of licensed pest professionals and strict safety protocols, a sealed compartment filled with Hornets, not two. In making sure the only person who'd ever meet those Hornets would be someone walking off with something that wasn't theirs. On the morning it all came together, neighbors were in position. Greg with his camera, Elena Flores with her phone aimed from behind her curtains, the elderly Harrisons on their porch with a perfect view, and Naomi Park, a local investigative reporter, parked around the corner ready to film what she hoped would be the climax of her series on HOA corruption. I set the package down on my porch, checked the feed, and waited, feeling the same focused calm I feel when a guidance system is armed and ready. Monica's garage door rolled up, Her SUV crawled out. She circled like a shark, did the fake, just walking routine twice, then finally walked straight up my steps, scooped up the decoy box, and carried it to her passenger seat without a flicker of hesitation. The GPS marked the boundary crossing. The timing circuit counted down. And seconds later the compartment popped and the Hornets exploded into the SUV, sending her shrieking into the street, flailing and running, yelling for help as the insects swarmed around her in a wild halo, neighbors pouring out, cameras rolling from every angle. The image of the all-powerful board chair sprinting down Birchfield Lane in terror becoming, in real time, the symbol of everything she'd done to us. When Detective Ruiz arrived, Monica tried to talk about assault and conspiracy and dangerous weapons, but the detective was there for something simpler and far heavier: theft, embezzlement, witness tampering, fraudulent reports. And as officers led Monica to the car, Naomi's camera captured the moment that would open the evening news: the mighty HOA queen with Hornet stings on her face and handcuffs on her wrists. And that night, in a packed community hall, we laid out everything: Greg's spreadsheets, my videos, the bribe recording, the fake invoices, the timeline of harassment and lies. And I stood in front of my neighbors and told them that what started as my stolen deliveries had turned into a mirror showing us what happens when nobody reads the fine print and everyone assumes someone else is paying attention. We voted to remove Monica from every position, backed the civil and criminal cases, and months later she stood in court and pled guilty to multiple felonies, taking a prison sentence and a restitution order instead of rolling the dice at trial. Her husband getting probation for his part, their assets helping pay back what they'd taken, the sale of her beloved SUV helping fund not just repairs but reforms, independent audits, open bidding, rotating leadership, a scholarship for kids from Cedar Ridge who want to study fields where ethics and precision matter, a desert restoration project in our common areas, an annual Unity Festival that feels like the opposite of those tense meetings she used to rule. I came to Cedar Ridge Estates looking for quiet anonymity after my life blew up, and somehow I ended up in the middle of a story about Hornets and HOA fraud that spread far beyond our streets. Became a cautionary tale and, weirdly, a blueprint. And as I watch my neighbors laugh together at block parties instead of whispering about fines and threats, I keep circling back to the same question, one I'm going to leave with you now, because revenge felt good in the moment. But justice is supposed to mean more than a viral clip and a prison sentence. When someone abuses power for years, stealing money, dignity, and peace of mind from everyone around them, where do we draw the line between creative self-defense and going too far? What does real justice look like in a world full of Monica Harlows, humiliation, prison, restitution, reform? And if you were in my shoes, how far would you go to make sure your neighborhood could never be stolen like that again?